Hello, welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm reviewing The Void, and I'm reviewing it again. Now, stop. Yes, I have reviewed this movie before. This is something I've never done before, which is do a re-review. I reviewed this movie. Again, I probably left it linked above. I can't remember even if I said that. And I haven't watched it since, and it was a good few years ago. And I found it on Amazon Prime, and I was like, I tell you what, I really fancy watching that again. And it's not because there's no other content to review, because there's plenty of stuff I could talk about. But I've been on a bit of a Lovecraft vibe recently. I've just shot my own Lovecraft film, which, if you're watching this around November, December time, there's a link to the GoFundMe down below. If you're watching this in the future, it's done. But I shot my own, and I'm on a bit of a Lovecraft vibe, and I thought I'd give this another watch, and I'd compare it to my old review, I guess. Just see what I thought about it, see whether I appreciated things differently, because I remember reviewing this when I was in my channel, quite, you know, it was in its infancy. I was quite new to reviewing stuff. And I was also, as much as I liked Lovecraft at the time, I was never as in-depth with Lovecraft as I am now. So I thought to myself, well, look, I'll give it a good watch again. I'll see whether I like it again. Now, this poster here is actually a new one for me. Some of the images you guys are probably more aware of would be this poster, for instance, you know, from the executive producer of The Witch, The Void. I mean, this is a very iconic image, and it is. You know, you look at it and you go, oh, if you've seen it before, you'll know exactly what it is. It sticks out in your mind. And that's something that they did really well with this film. So a bit of the backstory, right? This film, it was all crowdfunded. It raised $82,000. It's a Canadian film, so I don't know whether that's US dollars. And it only grossed $149,000 during its release, which is tragic. It deserves a lot more. I'm sure it's earned a lot more now. It's premiered at numerous things, then limited theatrical release, etc., etc. But I think this is one of those films that has grown with age, and I think people probably look at this with a lot more fondness, especially now, when everything is CGI. And this film was staggering for its practical effects. Absolutely staggering. You can't talk about this film without touching on its practical effects, because for 82 grand, well, 82.5 grand, right, is what they raised anyway. I'm sure it probably, I'm sure the budget was a little bit more than that, maybe. But this is amazing. You can't look at that and say that's not great. And this isn't even the half of it. They've got full body suits. They have creatures that are coming out of nowhere. They got, it's great. Like, it's genuinely fantastic. And it's one of those ones where you inevitably have to compare it to, you know, another iconic creature feature. The Thing, right? You have to compare it. You have to. Because if you don't, you're doing yourself a disservice, I guess. And because The Thing is so iconic. Now, does it hold up to The Thing's creature effects? No. But is it a great homage? Yeah. And obviously, they're not trying to be an homage. But when you look at creature effects, you look at practical, and you're looking at it, and you're like, oh, I can see a bit of The Thing in here. It's just one of those things. It's inevitable. So, in terms of the story, right? They did so well with this budget because it's a very, very small, enclosed story. But it doesn't need to be anything else. And of late, since we're getting these Lovecraftian films more and more, it's on the rise, isn't it? We've had The Colour Out of Space recently, right? Which I reviewed. I really liked that film. I thought it was a very good film, actually. I really did like that film as a big Lovecraft fan. But then we're also getting the polar opposite to that, like the likes of an HBO show written by D.B. Benioff and Weiss, or David Benioff and Weiss, and all of that, and that's looking at Lovecraft through a really bizarre lens. Him being like a cross-dressing lunatic or something like this. Like, it's mental what they're doing. So it's good to see, and it's good to throw back and appreciate a Lovecraft film that was just great and true to Lovecraft. And I think they achieved this. I really do. Now, it's interesting because it's written and directed by Stephen Kostanski and Jeremy Gillespie. and produced by Jonathan Bronfman and Casey Walker. Now, in terms of the production, right? So, Jeremy Gillespie initially worked at Pinewood on a floor below where Guillermo del Toro was working on the unfinished film At the Mountains of Madness, and recalled hearing him state that he wanted to do an H.P. Lovecraft film in a way that hadn't been done before. After hearing this, Gillespie felt that this sort of got the wheels in my mind working, trying to think of what that might be. So that was sort of where the imagery was birthed. All of this stuff relating to pyramids and triangles is left ambiguous for the audience to interpret as they would intentionally. So quite literally just an out-and-out Lovecraft film. Like, you can't say otherwise. Like, it really is a Lovecraft film inspired by someone making a Lovecraft film, him wanting to do his own. And that's part of it, right? So we close with this just monumental image of this black pyramid, which is supposed to represent, well, we don't know actually. This is the thing, right? Is that throughout the film, in terms of the overall story, the pyramids play a pretty key role, as evidenced by, the imagery on the main poster, which is here. So basically, there is a man, a doctor, in a hospital in a small town, very, very small town, nothing too major. And basically what he's been doing, he tragically lost his daughter, and ever since then he didn't want to accept death. That's not what he wanted to do. He didn't want to accept death, and as such he started practicing cult-like activities on bodies, on people, whatever. And in the basement of this hospital is basically a hell, which is, you can see here, and it says there is a hell, this is worse. And it's interesting. So he says that to go to fully master death and bring an end to that cycle, you have to go through a transformation, which is very Lovecraftian in and unto itself. And he didn't master it until sort of this one evening, basically, where a police officer winds up with a dude, taking him to a hospital, and then things start going astray. All cult-like activities happen. And it all culminates in this big crescendo. So there's all these moving pieces. There's the fact that the doctor impregnated a young girl, literally impregnated her, but was using the fetus to bring his daughter back to life from the void, the abyss. And you ask yourself, and this is the thing about this film, is you ask yourself, is it the actual void? Is it the void, or is it something else that he keeps bringing forth? Because the thing is, what he becomes is very different to the other creatures he has summoned forth from the void. He becomes a sort of almost a Cenobite, quite a Cenobite-esque character, almost like a foot soldier of hell, an acolyte of this void location. But when he brings his daughter back, she's just this deformed beast. Doesn't look like it's his daughter by any stretch of the imagination. So you ask yourself there, when you see that, is it actually the void? Because if he's becoming that, but then the things he summons back are completely something else, is this godlike being, the sort of pyramid structure which we see, is it just using him? And this image here, which you can see on the screen, is pretty pivotal as well, because he's sort of bringing forth these creatures, but in such a sick and sadistic, twisted manner. This is a woman who tragically lost her child, as well as this chap who's standing there in the picture as well. Tragically lost their child, and he says she's going to be birthing something new, something far more beautiful. And it's just so grotesque what this guy does. But again, going back to the sort of pyramid imagery, this image here, and this is why I wanted to talk about this specifically as well, knowing more about H.P. Lovecraft, it makes you think about Nyarlathotep. Now, Nyarlathotep is traditionally depicted more as a sort of an ancient Egyptian Lovecraftian sort of god, I guess, was very prevalent in ancient Egypt anyway. And it does make me wonder, is this... Obviously it's not, because, you know, they make no mention of Nyarlathotep. But I do think to myself, is this inspired more specifically by Nyarlathotep than anyone else? The man who is the god anyway, that is actively trying to build a force, a cult-like army, to rain hell up against Cthulhu. So I find that to be absolutely fascinating. But basically, anyway, this film is epic. It really is. It's absolutely great. I had a really good time with it. And I think one of my major complaints in the last review I did of this was more about the ambiguous ending, because I wanted to know more. But I don't think I articulated myself quite as well. In terms of that, is that, like, it builds to this massive crescendo of seeing this huge floating pyramid, and it's so ominous and it's so terrifying. It's not like terrifying, but you know what I mean. Terrifying to the characters in the story. And you think to yourself, God damn, like, I want to know what is in there. I want to know what was communicating to the Doctor. I want to know. Like, I want to know these things. And you don't get to know. And you probably never will. I know I don't think a sequel's ever going to happen, which is a shame. Because it deserves a sequel. But it was made on a budget. You're now in a cosmic world. Probably not going to be able to. But the imagery in this film is just so fantastic. So that's kind of just covering the story. I want to cover some other bits and pieces, because I've got a greater appreciation of imagery now. And just some of these like the real long, slow, lingering shots they did in this film. Just amazing. Like, it really is amazing what they've done in this film. And it's so simplistic, right? Like, outside of the practical effects work, which was clearly leagues above what most people have been able to do, right? What is so simplistic is just the outfits, right? So, you look at the KKK, right? Don't demonetize me, YouTube. You look at them, and that strikes... It's a very striking appearance, isn't it? White robes, you know, pointy eyes, all that stuff. It's very striking. And they mimic that in a way here by having people in white robes, but a black pyramid on their faces, just covered up, you know? And that is so striking. So striking. It's so clever as well, but so simplistic. Take something from history, which is so incredibly striking, so poignant, you know, a awful historical time, and then repurpose it for a Lovecraftian thing. It's great. It's genius, actually. It's really, truly genius. But then I go back to the long, slow, lingering shots, right? There's just weird, long, slow shots of the woods. Long, slow shots of... Well, yeah, it is a shot. It's a motion shot, anyway. Of almost like blood flow or cosmic galaxy dust, whatever you want to call it. And it's so expertly interwoven into this film that you just think to yourself, yeah, they really knew what they were doing. And it's a shame that they've not gone on to do anything similar to this since. That's what I think is so tragic here. Because from a technical aspect, it's great. The acting, for the most part, is really good. Some of it lets itself down. And there's definitely some lunatic coincidences going on that you really, like, a bit of suspension of disbelief. But then, when you step back from it and you go, well, you know, that was coincident. Oh, that was a coincidence. You step back from it and you actually go, well, this is a Lovecraft story. This thing is pulling everyone in. A greater entity is making people do this. So the coincidences, you can kind of accept them a little bit more when you take a step back and you review it as a Lovecraft movie rather than a standard movie. Because a standard movie, coincidences are pretty unforgivable when they're just lazy and boring. But these coincidences, you can say, well, it's the old god coordinated that then. You know, that's what the old god was doing. That's why. It was all, it was a big master plan that came together. So yeah, I really liked it. Sound mixing is great as well. God damn those creature effects. Awful. And it's just such an interesting concept. A man racked with guilt and grief of his daughter dying turns to an old god. An old force, an old power unknown to modern man. And tries to break the cycle, the confines of death. And pulling, souls back from the void that clearly just want to die, but he won't let them. That's the ones in the basement anyway. It's just so very interesting. Very compelling story anyway. So anyway, I thought I'd have new thoughts on it. And I watched it last night, and I can't recommend it enough. And I got more subscribers now, and there's other people that watch me more regularly, and people that would have seen it before probably aren't watching now. And I just thought I'd do it again, because I think it's important. It's a good film, and we've got crap films at the moment, so watch it. It's good. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on this down below. I hope you've seen it, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And I really, let me know what you think. I love this film. It's got a really special place in my heart. So let me know your thoughts down below. If you're new here, do hit subscribe. Thanks so much. Take care.